Sigurd I Magnusson, also known as Sigurd the Crusader, was King of Norway from 1103 to 1130. His rule, together with his half-brother Øystein, has been regarded by historians as a golden age for the medieval Kingdom of Norway. He is otherwise famous for leading the Norwegian Crusade, earning the eponym, the Crusader. Biography. Sigurd was one of the three sons to King Magnus III, the other two being Øystein and Olaf. They were all illegitimate sons of the king with different mothers. To avoid feuds or war, the three half-brothers co-ruled the kingdom from 1103. Sigurd would rule alone after Olaf died in 1115 and Øystein in 1123. Before being proclaimed King of Norway, Sigurd was also styled as King of the Isles and Earl of Orkney. He would pass the Earl of Orkney title on to Håkon Paulsson, a son of Paul Thorfinnsson. Many historians have viewed Sigurd and Øystein's rule as a golden age for the medieval Kingdom of Norway. The country was able to flourish both in wealth and expansion. Sigurd's participation in the Crusades as well as gained international recognition and prestige. Expedition with Magnus III. In 1098, Sigurd accompanied his father, King Magnus III, on his expedition to the Orkney Islands, Hebrides and the Irish Sea. He was made Earl of Orkney the same year, following the swift removal of the incumbent Earls of Orkney, Paul and Erlend Thorfinnsson. He was also, apparently, made King of the Isles in the same year, following the overthrow of the king by his father, Magnus. Although Magnus was not directly responsible for the death of the previous King of the Isles, he was the next ruler of the kingdom, most likely due to his conquest of the islands. This was the first time the kingdom had been under direct control by a Norwegian king. It is not certain whether Sigurd returned home with his father to Norway after the 1098 expedition. However, it is known that he was in Orkney when Magnus returned west in 1102 for his next expedition. While there, a marriage alliance was negotiated between Magnus and Muirheart Brian. He was High King of Ireland, one of the most powerful rulers in Ireland, as well as the ruler of Dublin. Sigurd was to marry Muirchetic's daughter Bjordmunjo, a young Irish princess and for a short period, queen consort. When King Magnus was ambushed and killed in Ulaid by an Irish army in 1103, the 14-year-old Sigurd returned to Norway along with the rest of the Norwegian army, leaving his child bride behind. Upon arriving in Norway, he and his two brothers, Øystein and Olaf, were proclaimed kings of Norway and would co-rule the kingdom together for some time. The expeditions conducted by Magnus were somewhat profitable to the Kingdom of Norway, as the many islands now under Norway would provide wealth, defenses and manpower. However, the Hebridean men quickly reasserted their independence after Magnus's death. Norwegian Crusade in 1107. Sigurd led the Norwegian Crusade to support the newly established Kingdom of Jerusalem, which had been founded after the First Crusade. He was the first European king to lead a crusade, and his feats earned him the nickname Jorslafari. Sigurd possessed a total force of about 5,000 men and about 60 ships, as recorded by the sagas. The two kings, Øystein and Sigurd, initially disputed about who should lead the contingent and who should remain home to rule the kingdom. Sigurd was eventually chosen to lead the crusade, possibly because he was a more experienced traveller, having been on several expeditions with his father, Magnus III, to Ireland and islands outside Scotland. Sigurd fought in Lisbon, various Mediterranean islands and Palestine. He would often fight the enemies himself. Amongst his loyal soldiers and kinsmen, they were continually victorious and vastly successful, gaining large amounts of treasure and booty. However, the loot probably never arrived in Norway, since Sigurd left almost everything he had gained in Constantinople. On his way to Jerusalem, he visited King Roger Roger II of Sicily in his castle at Palermo. Upon arriving in the Holy Land, he was greeted by Baldwin I, King of Jerusalem. He received a warm welcome and spent much time with the king. The two kings rode to the river Jordan where Sigurd might have even been baptized. King Baldwin asked Sigurd to join him in order Lafo Faliero, Doge of Venice, in the capture of the coastal city of Sidon, which had been refortified by the Fatimids in 1098. The siege of Sidon was a great success for the Crusaders, and the city was conquered on 5 December 1110. Eustace Grenier was granted the lordship of Sidon after the city was captured, by order of Baldwin and the Patriarch of Jerusalem, Ghibellin of Arles. A splinter was taken from the True Cross and given to Sigurd after the siege, as a token of friendship and as a relic for his heroic participation in the Crusades. Thereafter King Sigurd returned to his ships and prepared to leave the Holy Land. They sailed north to the island of Cyprus, where Sigurd would stay for a time. Sigurd then sailed to Constantinople and entered the city through the gate called the Gold Tower, riding in front of his men. He stayed here for a while, meeting and spending much time with the emperor. Returned to Norway. Before leaving Constantinople, Sigurd gave all of his ships and many treasures away to the Byzantine emperor. In return, the emperor gave him many strong horses for him and his fellow kinsmen. Sigurd planned to return to Norway overland, but there were few of his men who planned to return with him. Many were to stay behind in the great city to take up service for the emperor as part of his Varangian Guard. The trip would take many years, and he would visit many countries on the road. Sigurd traveled in a trip that supposedly would take around 3 years, from Bulgaria and through Hungary, Pannonia, Swabia, and Bavaria, where he met with the Emperor Lothar of the Holy Roman Empire. He later arrived in Denmark, where he was greeted by King Niels of Denmark, who eventually gave him a ship so that he could sail all the way to Norway. After returning to Norway in 1111, Sigurd came back to a flourishing and prosperous kingdom. King Øystein had used all his energy and willpower to create a strong and stable country. The church had especially gained. During Sigurd's reign, the tithe was introduced in Norway, which greatly strengthened the church in the country. Sigurd also founded the diocese of Stavanger. He had been denied divorce by the bishop in Bergen, so he simply installed another bishop further south and had him perform the divorce. Sigurd made his capital in Kongel and built a strong castle there. He also kept the relic given to him by King Baldwin, a splinter reputed to be from the True Cross. In 1123, Sigurd once again set out to fight in the name of the church, this time to Småland in Sweden. The inhabitants had reportedly renounced their Christian faith and were again worshipping Old Norse deities. Sigurd died in 1130 and was buried in Halvard's church in Oslo. Sigurd and his queen Malmfrid had a daughter, Kristin Sigurdsdatter. He had no legitimate male heirs. Magnus, his illegitimate son with his mistress Borghild Olavsdotter, became King of Norway. He shared the throne in an uneasy peace with another claimant, Harald Jarl. This led to a power struggle following Sigurd's death between various illegitimate sons and other royal pretenders, which escalated into a lengthy and devastating civil war. This laid the groundwork for long feuds over who should rule the Kingdom of Norway in the 12th century and early 13th century. Civil War. The Civil War era in Norway lasted from 1130 until 1240, with several interlocked conflicts of varying scale and intensity. The background for these conflicts were the unclear Norwegian succession laws, social conditions and struggles between various groups of noblemen fighting for power. There were two main parties, the Bagler and Birkebeiner. The rallying point regularly was a royal son, or a person claimed by his followers to be a royal son, who was set up as the head figure of the party in question, to oppose the rule of a king from the contesting party. In the traditions of succession of the day, there was little or no difference between a legitimate and an illegitimate son of a king. The competence and popularity of the potential heir was supposed to be the deciding factor. Ancestry.